The single dad mechanic almost didn't stop. His old pickup was already low on fuel, his phone buzzed with reminders about overdue bills, and the sky was beginning to turn the flat road into a ribbon of blinding afternoon light. But when he saw the patrol car on the shoulder with its hood raised and hazard lights blinking like a quiet plea, something old and stubborn inside him pressed the brake. He pulled over, stepped out, and as he walked closer, his heart slowed, until it didn't. Because the face beneath the uniform, bent over an engine that refused to cooperate, was a face he had never forgotten, not in all the years he had tried to bury the past. Before the story truly unfolds, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of helping someone when it costs you something, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. These stories matter because you matter. He had learned to live with weight. Not the kind that shows on a scale, but the kind that settles into a man's shoulders when he becomes a father overnight. Years ago, the world had collapsed on him in a way that left no room for anger or self-pity. His wife's laughter had vanished from their kitchen, leaving behind a toddler who cried at night and a silence that pressed against the walls. He became a single dad the same week he lost his job at a dealership after a round of layoffs. Grief and responsibility arrived together, and neither waited for him to catch his breath. He found work where he could, eventually building a small reputation as a mechanic who would take any job and do it right, even if the pay barely covered groceries. His days became a cycle of school drop-offs, grease-stained hands, and bedtime stories read with tired eyes. He didn't complain. He just kept going. The road that day felt like any other. He had finished a long shift at a rural shop and was heading home to make dinner before picking up his daughter from a neighbor's house. The patrol car stood out against the open fields, red paint of another vehicle parked nearby catching the sun. The cop leaned forward, sleeves rolled, jaw set in frustration. He recognized her before she looked up, and the recognition cut through him like a blade. Time thinned. The hum of insects and distant traffic faded. In its place rose a memory of a rainy night, a hospital corridor, and a young officer whose face had been steady when his world fell apart. Back then, he had been someone else. Younger. Less careful. He had made mistakes that weren't crimes but felt like them in hindsight, missed calls, impatience, the kind of pride that convinces you tomorrow will always wait. The accident had not been his fault, but guilt doesn't care about facts. He remembered the officer who had found him sitting on a curb outside the emergency room, hands shaking, breath shallow, unable to stand. She had knelt to his level, not as authority but as a human being, and spoken to him with a calm that anchored him when nothing else could. She had stayed long after her report was done, long after she needed to, because sometimes a stranger sees your pain before anyone else does. Now, years later, he stood on a quiet roadside, the past staring back at him through eyes that had learned their own kind of weariness. He hesitated, unsure whether to be seen or to turn back, but habit won. He approached the open hood, introduced himself, and asked if he could take a look. She nodded, distracted, and stepped aside. He leaned in, listening not just with his ears but with the intuition built from thousands of engines that had taught him how to hear trouble before it spoke. The patrol car's problem was simple and cruel in its timing. A cracked hose, brittle from heat and age, had finally given up. It wasn't something you'd notice until it was too late, until steam rose and the engine protested. He assessed what he had, what he could improvise, and what the clock would allow. While he worked, he felt the familiar ache in his back and the old tension in his chest that always came when the past brushed too close. He kept his eyes on the engine bay, focused on the practical steps, because mechanics understand something about life: you fix what you can with what you have, and you don't curse the rest. She watched him with curiosity that slowly turned into recognition. When their eyes met, it was like a door opened that neither of them had expected. Her posture shifted, a subtle softening, and he saw it then, the memory surfacing in her, too. The moment hung between them, fragile as glass. He felt exposed, not because of who he was now, but because of who he had been in her presence before, a man broken open by loss, held together by someone else's steadiness. He finished the temporary repair with careful hands, tightening, testing, wiping away grime. It wasn't perfect, but it would get her back to the station. As he stepped back, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched across the road like fingers. He felt the weight of all the things he never got to say, the gratitude he never fully expressed, the life that had bent but not broken. He also felt something else, quieter and stronger, a sense that the circle had turned, that help given freely has a way of returning when you least expect it. Life had not been gentle with either of them. She had climbed through the ranks, learning to carry the badge with humility and resolve. He had learned to be both mother and father, to cook dinners that passed for edible, to braid hair with clumsy patience, to sit through school meetings with oil under his nails. He had learned that dignity doesn't come from ease, but from showing up. Standing there, the roadside felt like a bridge between who they were and who they had become. As he packed up his tools, his phone buzzed again. He ignored it, just for a moment, and let himself breathe. The fields whispered with wind. The engine purred, tentative but alive. He realized that the help he had given wasn't just mechanical. It was proof to himself that he could still be the kind of man who stops, who cares, who recognizes a need and meets it without calculation. The years since that hospital night had been full of small victories that never made headlines. The first time his daughter slept through the night. The day he saved enough to replace his failing truck. The afternoon he watched her run across a playground, laughter ringing like a bell, and felt a hope that surprised him. He had learned to forgive himself, slowly, imperfectly. He had learned that love doesn't disappear, it changes shape and teaches you how to carry it. The officer closed the hood and tested the car, relief easing the tension from her shoulders. The road seemed less lonely now, the moment less accidental. He sensed that this meeting mattered in ways he might not understand yet. Not because it erased the past, but because it honored it. Because kindness, once planted, can lie dormant until the right season brings it back to life. If this story is already stirring something in you, pause for a second and think about the people who stopped for you when you needed it most. Those moments shape us more than we know. He returned to his truck, dusted off his hands, and prepared to leave. The world had not suddenly become easier. Bills would still arrive. The engine in his pickup would still knock on cold mornings. His daughter would still need him in 1,000 small ways that asked more than he thought he had. But as he pulled onto the road, he carried a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. It was the quiet assurance that he was not just surviving, he was participating in the invisible economy of grace that keeps people going. The drive home felt shorter. The sky deepened into evening, colors bleeding into one another like a promise. He thought about how stories intersect without warning, how strangers can become anchors, how a single decision, to stop, to help, to remember, can ripple outward. He would make dinner late, apologize to his neighbor, tuck his daughter into bed, and listen to her tell him about her day. He would kiss her forehead and mean it with every part of himself. Near the edge of town, he slowed at a light and caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. Lines marked his face now, evidence of time and care. He didn't look away. He nodded, as if to say that he accepted the men he had become, forged by hardship and kindness in equal measure. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of helping someone without expecting anything back, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these stories alive and reaching the people who need them most. Before the ending, leave a comment below telling us about a moment when a stranger's kindness changed your life, or when you chose to stop and help even when it wasn't easy. The single dad mechanic pulled into his driveway as night settled in, the house glowing softly from within. Somewhere on a quiet road behind him, a patrol car made its way back to safety. 2 lives continued forward, not because the past had been erased, but because it had been honored and transformed. And in that small, ordinary act of stopping, the world felt a little more human, a little more hopeful, and a lot more worth believing in.